Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of live discussions on Dearborn Blog. We are honored to have you with us tonight for an important conversation about the meaning, challenges, and possibilities of democracy in our time. Our platform is dedicated to fostering dialogue and that bridges communities, uplifts diverse voices, and encourages critical engagement with the issues that shape our lives. Tonight, we are joined by a remarkable person. We are joined with Anita Rios. Anita is a longtime Green Party activist whose leadership has shaped the party at the local, state, and national levels. She has served as a co chair of the National Committee of the Green Party of the United States, of the Ohio Green Party, and of the Latin Caucus. Anita is also a co founder of both the Latinx Caucus and the Diversity Committee, demonstrating her lifelong commitment to inclusion, equity, and grassroots democracy. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor.
In a world where democracy is under pressure from corporate power, authoritarianism, and disillusionment, it's more vital than ever that we revisit what democracy truly means. Is it simply the act of voting, or is it something deeper about empowering people, ensuring justice, and creating a society where every voice matters? With Anita Reyes, we'll explore these questions together, drawing on her decades of activism and vision for a politics rooted in people, planet, and peace. This is not just a conversation about democracy as an abstract idea, it's about democracy as a lived practice, one that must be defended, expanded, and reimagined for our times. And that's a lifelong struggle and effort done by Anita. So let's start with you, Anita, and your long history of activism, protecting and um, uh, promoting democracy, true democracy, and how do you see a true democracy is?
Well, as you said, your question about is it just about voting? And no, absolutely not. The voting, going on election day to cast your vote or however you do it, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's just the very smallest part of what it means to be in a democracy. And I think that, um, as I mentioned to you when we were speaking earlier, it is my impression that America does not truly have a democracy, that we have a myth of democracy. We have a goal of democracy. We have a seed of democracy, but we have a long way to go to actually realize democracy. And I think there are many people in this country who have given up on democracy. And I think that all you have to do is look at the statistics around who votes and who doesn't vote, and you realize that most people in this country, or at least 50% of the people, and sometimes more than that, do not vote. They do not show up. They do not come. Well, I think they are voting. I think they're voting with their feet. They are casting a vote of no confidence in the political structure that we have set up in order to engage in democracy. And I think it speaks volumes that we get such low voter turnouts. And I think it also um, speaks volumes that in the past few decades, the political elite in this country have gone to great lengths to make it harder and harder for people to vote. I think that it, as I said, I think democracy is a myth in this country, but I think it's a very powerful myth, and I think we can leverage that myth in order to create a deeper and a stronger democracy. But I think that a big part of that lies with us, the grassroots people. I think that we have to understand that nobody is coming to save us, that we have to engage in the work of saving ourselves, and we have to speak up. We have to find our voices. We have to find the issues in our communities that will make our communities stronger and better, and actually participate in the fundamentals of creating community through democracy.
Anita, you said a very bold statement that we are not a democracy. We are striving to become one. Can you talk a little bit more? What is because most of us think we are living in a democracy. United States is an example of a democracy, and we usually, the American rhetoric that we actually trying to spread democracy around the world. So enlighten us on how. What's your perspective that we are not living in a democracy and that we are striving to become a democracy?
Well, I would say two things. One is historically, the people who were allowed to actually vote, who were allowed to participate in democratic decisions, that was limited from the very start of the creation of this country as it is now, and there were limitations on who could vote. And certainly, if you were a woman, you could not vote. If you were a person of color, most likely you could not vote. And if you did not own property, you could not vote. So, just from the very beginning, I don't think that that can really be called a democracy if you say only rich white men can vote. And that is exactly what our founding fathers created. So, that is from the very beginning. That is a very tainted seed. So how has that played out over the years? We have continued to see restrictions on who could vote, and the whole civil rights movement and the voting rights movement was centered around a whole group of people being given the right to vote, and we are watching that all being eroded now. It's been pushed back. Our Supreme Court currently has made some rulings that are just as discriminatory and just as ugly as the Dred Scott decision. We have people making or enshrining laws in our country that are openly discriminatory. And if you look at what is going on in Texas now, but not just in Texas, it should be illegal to gerrymander. It should be illegal to gerrymander. The people should be able to pick their representatives, not the other way around. The political parties should not play with the demarcations of who you vote for and where you vote, and um, construct voting districts that are for their use rather than for the exercise of the people's vote. I mean, it to me, just the very fact that they are allowed to gerrymander tells you how corrupt our voting system is, our political system is. So I think that all of that serves to discourage people. I think that that is a huge reason why people do not come out and vote. I don't think that they really have much confidence in um, our political system. And over the years, I have run for office several times. And each time I ran for office, I would do a part of the door to door. You have to gather signatures to get on the ballot. And the ballot laws are different in every state. And one thing that we Greens do is we learn the ballot laws wherever we are. We're a grassroots um, political party, and so we learn the mechanics of what we have to do to get on the ballot wherever we are. Here in Ohio, it's fairly difficult to get on the ballot. There in Michigan, it's a little bit easier. It's a lot easier, actually. But here in Ohio, you have to gather signatures. I think you do that in Michigan too, but I'm not positive. But depending on how the laws are in your state, you gather a lot of signatures or a little bit of signatures. Here in Ohio, you gather a lot of signatures. It is almost a daunting task, but it's also a good exercise for running for office. You have to go door to door. You introduce yourself. You ask people to sign your petition, and you let them know that's to get you on the ballot. So I've done a bit of that. So it's kind of really good polling, because you go, you do it randomly. You go wherever you feel there's a good concentration of potential voters, and you get a variety of responses. And based on some of what I have observed, some of the responses I've gotten from my time going door to door and actually trying to get signatures for my petitions to get on the ballot, people have a variety of responses to you. Some people are really surprised. If you go into inner city neighborhoods, a lot of people are really surprised that you're even there asking them to for their signature. A large percentage of them are not registered to vote. A large percentage of them will tell you flat out, no, I'm not going to sign that because I don't have any confidence in the political system anymore. I have been told that by people more than once. You know who told me that? When I was running for governor many years ago? Dave Chappelle. I was down in Yellow Springs circulating petitions.
Yeah, he lives there.
And he lived there, and
Mm.
I was just going, up to random people. I didn't even know who it was. Somebody told me afterwards that was Dave Chappelle, but he said, "No, I'm not going to sign it because I don't have any confidence um, in the political process anymore." And so I think that as uh, the damage is done
Mm.
when the politicians play those ugly political games, people get discouraged. But I think that they count on that. I don't think they care if we vote or not. I don't think they care if they're elected by 10 people or 2,000 people, as long as they are elected. And I think that the antidote to that is that we vote. We go
Mm.
out there, we run other candidates, and we vote.
Okay, let's dissect this a little bit because you are saying that this is the sign of America diseased democracy, that democracy is not really healthy in America because of the very low turnout of voters. So to put this in a little bit of perspective, the average in America is it's about 60% for the for the not for the midterms, for the presidential elections.
If
And
they're good,
yeah, that's the best
sometimes they're
case.
less than that.
Right.
That's
So, in the best case, it's actually the best case scenario was in 2020, where 66%, so two out of three, showed up to vote for the presidential elections. But typically, it is 60% on the averages of 63%. And that is the lowest among developed countries. Belgium is about 90%, Sweden is about 87%, Denmark, South Korea, Australia is between 75 and 85%. Canada, UK, and Germany are about 75%. So we are one of the lowest among developed nations. And that's only talking about presidential elections. If we talk about midterms, don't even mention it. We are at an average of about 47%. Sometimes it dips down to about 33%, where two out of three are not voting. Most of the country, the majority, are not even voting. And if democracy means government by and for the people, then when large swaths of the population don't vote, democracy strains under the weight of limited participation. And these trends raise these urgent doubts that you've mentioned. And also, they raise questions about access, motivation, because someone might say everyone has the opportunity to go vote. So it is, it's really on the people. But it is more intricate than that. It is the socioeconomic situation, is the trust, the belief, the faith, the hope, and change. Talk to us a little bit about that, because someone might say, well, it is people's fault. People who are not engaged politically, they're not voting, and people who are. So it's not the fault of America.
Well, I would say a couple of things. One is I think that many people are voting. They are voting with their feet. They're saying, no, I won't be part of this. And I think that's a valid vote. I think that we need to accommodate that in some way, but our leaders don't want to. They do not want to hear um, dissenting voices. And I think that it's a very valid argument to say, who do I really have to vote for? I get to pick, you know, bad or worse. And some people just have no confidence and no desire to do that. The other thing is we have put in place a lot of laws that make it difficult for some communities to vote. We have put in ID laws. We didn't used to have those. You could go in and just vote and sign your name, and it was your signature. Your signature, how you signed it, and they'd look at it. They still do, but it's not that anymore that counts. It's your identification. But the thing is that, um, you know, those state IDs, anybody can get a state ID in Ohio. I presume that's the same in most states. They cost money. They all cost money. And you have to jump through hoops to get them. You have to have other documentation. I would share that if you are poor, if you are disabled, if you have limited language, and that can happen not just because you're from another country. I worked with my uncle. My uncle was deaf and he was mute and he had limited schooling. And you know, I worked with him for probably, I want to say it took me about 8 years to get him an ID, to get him an identification. So, I got him his first identification. You know how old he was when I finally managed to do that? He was 80. He was 80 years old. He could not, um, by that time he could not really read well. He was elderly, his eyes were bad, and I was a mental health case manager. So I used to work with people who lived in the street or who were severely mentally ill or had substance abuse issues. So I actually know how to get somebody's identification, how to get that documentation together. I used to do that for a living. I used to go into the shelters and help people put their documentation together. And it's difficult when you don't have a stable environment. Now, my uncle did, and the thing with him was that he was deaf, and um, there were many obstacles. It was a very long story about how I ended up getting him his ID. He was born in Texas, so and um, you have to be very specific about where in Texas. I knew he was from Austin, but he was actually born in a small town called Manor, which is outside of Austin. So, I had to, investigate all this and track stuff down. And, some of my older family members had passed away. So there wasn't a lot of people that I could go to and say, what about this or what about that? And but so I say that to say, even, it can take a lot. So that, and a lot of elderly people um have trouble with finding the documentation if they've moved around, if things have happened in their lives, and if they have any kind of obstacles, it's really hard to do that. And then the bottom line is, then you have to actually get to um, you have to do this in person. You have to get to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles or wherever it is you go for those. And and that's not easy either. And so I think that there are many obstacles now for people actually being able to vote and being able to register to vote. But the other thing that is an obstacle is the restrictions about people with felony convictions, people with a criminal record. In some states, once you have a felony conviction, you can never vote. And they're changing those laws a lot. But one thing that I ran into quite a bit when I was petitioning, because I would always go and petition in the inner cities, I would go and petition in places where politicians didn't usually go. And I would do that because a part of my running for office um, was to talk to people, was to be able to change the conversation about politics, and to have a conversation about politics with a broad array of people. So I would go into the projects frequently, and I would circulate my petitions. But also, they're close together in those projects. That people are very close together. So if you have people who are registered to vote, and you go out with voter registration cards so that you can register people to vote, and it can be very effective. But I'd run into a lot of people who would tell me I can't register to vote because I have a felony conviction. And that's not true in Ohio. It was true. But I found people who were actually told by their parole officers or by the administration that they were dealing with through the courts. They were actually told that they could not vote anymore. And that was not true. And sometimes they did not believe me when I told them, yeah, yeah, you can register to vote. But they were afraid to do that because if you recall, in Florida, um, they tried very hard. They passed a law that they allowed convicted felons who had served their time to be able to register to vote. But there was also another what level of punitive damages that they had to the, the reparations or the restoration, the fines that they still owed. If they still owed fines, they still couldn't register to vote. And to me, that's the equivalent of debtor's prison. But so some people who thought they were able to register to vote because of that law change didn't realize that they had to resolve all those fines and court costs prior to doing that. And they went and registered to vote, and they were charged with a felony for doing that. So there's a lot of fear around that. People are afraid that if they register to vote and they have a felony conviction, that they're going to be charged again. And in some cases, that has happened. So,
Yes.
when you have those kinds of obstacles, it makes people who are already reluctant about the system even more reluctant.
Right. Plus, in addition to that, there's other also factors that makes it difficult to obtain ID, like very simply the cost of getting an ID.
Yes,
It can be as low as $15, but typically it's around 50, and that's not calculating if you have other things missing. And some people just can't. They're below poverty line, which is almost 40% of America.
sure.
So
And
that
then it's taking the time off of work to actually go and stand in line because it takes
exactly
hours sometimes to
right. The Secretary of State is a nightmare in some cities, and people can't afford taking off time. I've needed my some work on my teeth for 6 months ago, but I scheduled it for this Friday because I have off this Friday, and it's challenging for me to match the dentist schedule with my off days. So it's really challenging. And also there is transportation. Some of the rural areas, they don't have offices. It requires travel. If there's lost or missing records, especially for elderly Black Americans who were born in the Jim Crow South, where they've never issued birth certificates, or Native Americans on reservations sometimes also have this issue. It's a bureaucratic nightmare to obtain these documents. And statistically speaking, I've pulled out some statistics here to show the degree of this issue, that this issue is not a small issue. This is a major issue. According to Vote Riders, and 15 other sources, 29 million voting age Americans in 2020 did not have an ID, a government issued photo ID, or they had an expired one that they can't use during elections. 29%. In another stat from Brennan Center for Justice, 21 million US citizens, that's about 9% of eligible voters, don't have ready access to documents proving their citizenship, like birth certificates or passports, needed in some states. In states with strict ID laws, over 3 million lacked a current driver's license, and more than 1 million lacked any government issued photo ID. And who's affected by that disproportionately? It's the young people, it's Black people, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, and non-partisans sometimes, Asian Pacific Islanders. All these are affected by this more than often. Like young Americans, over 11 million, aged between 18 and 29, didn't have a driver's license. Among 18 to 19 years old, 39% lacked one. Nearly 47% of Black Americans between 18 and 29 didn't have a license with current name and address. And also, lower income, less educated individuals also are disproportionately affected by that, because due to lack of valid ID, adult Americans earning under 30,000 a year are about 5 times more likely to lack a driver's license than those earning 100,000 and above. So that is all um, uh, faults in democracy. And also,
Absolutely.
and added to that, the distrust. If we come to the other level of people choosing, having the ID but choosing not to vote because of the system that leaves no hope for them, that has not spoken their voices for very long, that they have given up on that. That's another issue. I mean, I had a hard time convincing my parents to vote, and then when I finally convinced them to vote, um, and they voted, I think in 20. I think they voted for Obama when I convinced them to vote. It was Obama and the ballot, and then Obama turned to be a big disappointment, the drone president. Um, so they were said like, so, like, what did we do? It's not gonna. We've just we wasted our time basically, and did not improve their lives. And then when last time the presence of Dr. Jill Stein on the ballot gave hope to people that you can vote for someone speaking your voice, someone who's the only anti-genocide option on the ballot. And they voted for her. But the low turnout, the low votes that goes for third party can be a little bit disappointing, can be a little
It
bit
is.
discouraging, but we have to keep pushing, because there's no other way for us to move forward except to keep having the hope, especially now with Gen Z coming to play as a majority of voters by 2030.
I think it is very important that we not lose hope, that we not lose what that spark. Yes, democracy is a myth. So let's own it. Let's take it and let's make it ours. We know that the powers that be, that the Democrats and the Republicans have corrupted it, but we can fix it. That's the thing. I feel like um, I see people who are working class people, who are poor people. I live, you know, among them. And what we do is we make things work for us. We go out, we fix our cars, we fix our houses, we do what we need to do to keep our heads above water, but we need to do that same thing with respect to politics. We need to cobble together a democracy, even though there are many obstacles. The only thing that will overcome those obstacles is us, is a mass movement of people who refuse to give up, who refuse to walk away, who refuse to turn away from a situation that is completely unacceptable. Um, I look at the potential for our communities. We are a very wealthy nation. We could have so much for our people, and we could do so much good in this world, if we stopped funding. genocide, if we stopped padding the pockets of billionaires. Um, it's not rocket science. We could have livable, safe, strong communities, and we could lend a hand to create livable, safe, strong communities throughout the world. And so I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer. Uh, we we can stand up, and yes, it's work. It really absolutely is work, but it's very gratifying work. It's work that connects you to your neighbors. It's work that makes you feel meaningful in your own life. I have been doing this for a very long time. I've run for office several times. I have never won, and I do not feel defeated. I feel educated. I feel connected. I feel hopeful, and I feel like I have been a part of a movement to change the way things are, because the way things are does not work.
Thanks, Anita. I have a question about democracy and disillusionment. So, how do we engage communities that feel disillusioned, not only by the two-party system, but by deeper concerns of morality, justice, and complicity in harmful policies? You're a founder of the Latinx caucus and the Green Party, so you're an activist in the Latino community. And Dearborn blog is pretty much in Dearborn. That is the capital of Arab America. And these two communities have a lot of commonality, as all minority communities in America, especially ones that are underrepresented and usually typical to being victims of profiling, like what we see today of the ICE raids affecting the Latino community, or what we saw after September 11 of all the Patriot Act disinfringement on the Arab American rights. So talk to us about that. How do we engage our communities about their feeling of being disillusioned?
Well, I think it is not a one size fits all answer. It's and that's one of the things that makes it difficult. But as you know, the Green Party is dedicated to grassroots activism. And I think that what that means is that in each community where we are active, you there in Dearborn, me here in Toledo, you take the pulse of your community. You look at the things that are happening in your community, and you stand with people who share your values. And sometimes it's one person, sometimes you're alone, actually. But sometimes it's one person, and sometimes it's a handful of people. And you do that enough times, and you cobble together a movement of individual voices speaking for the same rights, for the same truths. And it is not an easy thing. I think it's something that humanity has been doing since we have existed. I think humanity has been struggling with these issues always. And I think we do it good and we do it bad sometimes. But I think that some of us will always persist and always do this, and others won't. And with with the Green Party, we're primarily volunteers, so we have some ebb and flow. People come in and they go out, but they, learn a piece of this thing and they take it with them. And I think that there are many obstacles to doing this. They're very specific to where you are at. And in some places, the obstacle is that you're in a red state. In some places, the obstacle is that you're in a blue state. Because sometimes, well, usually the Democrats oppose us far more than the Republicans do. But here in Ohio, I would say it's primarily Republican. And I look at the powers that be here in Ohio, our state legislator, our governor, our Supreme Court, they are all controlled by Republicans, and they are doing a horrible job. They are the most corrupt cabal of, um, I'm trying not to say profanity, but they are is so corrupt and it's so apparent. And I think people are, one, leaving the state, two, just stopping participation in the electoral process. But so, yes, it is very hard to engage people and say, well, come back into this process where these people who are in control of it will ignore you, will try to circumvent what you're doing, will try to put many obstacles in your way. But I guess for myself, I look at it and I think that we really don't have anything to lose. I mean, we can accept the way things are, or we can do something. And if we fail, as we are trying, then we try again the next time. And so I cannot give you a formula. Do this, this, and this. But I would say there are some things that are very important to do. One is learn learn the process of running for office, learn the process of being on the ballot, pay attention to the laws that are being made and who is championing what laws.
Mhm.
And that gets very depressing, by the way, because when you pay attention to what they are doing, you realize how really bad what a really bad job they are doing. But then you also can see where are the places where there's perhaps some weaknesses. Like you can look at who got how many votes it took to get into office, and sometimes it's very few votes. And you can challenge some races where the person got in with just a very small number of votes. I guarantee you, when you do that, when you go in to a particular district where the incumbent just barely squeaked in there, they're going to throw a lot of money at that. They'll throw a lot of money at that once they have opposition there. But still, you can make some of those races competitive. And so I think it takes a bit of persistence, a lot of what willingness to challenge and to speak up and to not be afraid.
Awesome. And by the way, just being so, I wanna we'll come to your personal experience running for office. But once a person and the Green Party, if a person have values that align with the Green Party and they decide to run as a Green in one of the open oppositions in their state, when they are on the ballot under Green Party, a lot of people, they vote Green because they agree on the values of the Green Party. So we have individuals here who had thousands of votes uh, without any campaigning, without appearing once on any media, or without spending much money on any social media or sending cards to the houses. Why? Because they appeared under the Green Party and they got thousands of votes. And that's not a small number. In Dearborn itself, I think about 14,000 votes were just straight Green Party ticket on the ballot. And that's a city that has never voted Green before. In 2020, they had only 400 votes for Green. But in 2024, pretty much the Green Party was known in Dearborn for the first time. And the people who knew it, basically, they voted for it. So don't be discouraged by not having, the Green Party does not accept corporate money, does not accept campaign finance from corporations or from PACs or from lobbies. So we do it from a grassroots movement, and if you have that uh, um, energy to run for office, then you will have a grassroots movement in support of you. And we're going to hear Anita's personal experience about that in a second. But before that, I want to ask to stay on the same subject. Latinos and Arab Americans both face challenges in terms of underrepresentation, really, in office. From you organizing the Latinx voices in the Green Party, what things you learned that could apply for the Arab Americans and Muslim Americans who sometimes debate whether voting is even worth it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we do have low voter turnout, as your community does also, and some of it in some places it's language barriers and a number of things. But um, with the Latinx caucus, I think that the thing is, um, it, I think that this is similar with your community, the Arab community, is that we are not homogeneous. We are not one thing from one place. We are many communities, and it, it, we are a diaspora that is very, very broad. And so the useful thing for us is to have voices from many parts of that diaspora. Um, in some parts of the country, it's mostly Mexican Americans. There's a lot of Mexican Americans here. In some parts of the country, it's primarily Puerto Ricans. And one thing people don't realize is that all Puerto Ricans have American citizenship because they are basically they're occupied by the United States. And in the Latinx caucus, for the most part, we support independence for Puerto Rico, which would put an end to that citizenship thing. But um, many of our members, well, virtually all of our members who are Puerto Rican, really are advocates of independence for Puerto Rico. So to have voices from each of those communities coming together and talking about shared experiences, and we share experiences with the Black Caucus as well, because we have very similar issues when it comes to rates of incarceration and problems with the educational system and a number of issues. But I think that having the voices from the people who are dealing in those communities, who are a part of that community, is absolutely vital. And it's vital to the Green Party as well, because what we are seeking to do more than anything else is to go to places and represent people who are not currently represented, to find people who are willing to stand up and whose values, comport with ours. And I think so. It is that representation that is the key for having some amount of success. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that the Green Party is a baby. The Green Party has not been around for very long. We have not been around. We've been around since the 80s in this country. So, I have children who are older than the Green Party. But so we are growing still. We are growing into that thing that we will be. And we have been very persistent, and we have tried to form entities that are going to take us to the communities where um, our natural constituencies are. And I am really, really pleased that you have been working with the Arab Muslim caucus to come into the Green Party and be a part of that, because I think that's the kind of thing that we need at the table, making the decisions about how we craft a political party that is truly representative of the American people. So I know that that wasn't really an answer per se, because I think that we can't answer that yet. It's how is this done is the answer that we are creating right now.
Thank you. That has a lot of wisdom, Anita. Dr. Ali Ajami, the president of the Arab American Center for Culture and Arts, asks, is it clear enough that our constitution is being breached and stepped over by those in power? Legally speaking, what could be done to stop it?
Well, my impression is that until we change the water that we swim in, we will be in a political mess. And what I mean by that is that I think it is absolutely um, true that our Constitution is being breached, but it's open to interpretation. And as long as the Supreme Court sides with Donald Trump and sides with evil that is being done, and it is evil. I mean, some of the things that they have passed in recent years, I find utterly appalling. And but that will not change unless we change the people who make the rules. And the people who make the rules will not do what we need them to do unless they are in fear of being displaced by somebody who will. So our control, our ability to change it rests with our ability to change our elected officials. And we don't have to do that with the presidency or with senators or even with congressmen. We can start in our own hometowns. We can start at the state, county, and municipal levels, and we can put things in place. And honestly, they know that. The leaders know that. They are working hard to put in place laws that erode community control. So I would say that the only antidote to this, I mean, the courts have done something, but here in Ohio, um, we have not undertaken certain lawsuits that in the past we would have, like ballot access lawsuits. Like initially we got on the ballot through a lawsuit here in Ohio, but we won't try that right now because we don't feel that the courts are sympathetic to that at this point. They're so corrupt themselves. But that only changes if we change the people who make the laws and change the people who appoint the judges. And we change the judges because in some places you can you vote directly for the judges. And I think there in Michigan you have the judges are actually put forward. The what the state Supreme Court are actually sponsored by the political parties. So uh, I think you all there in Michigan have a better shot at making changes through the courts than we do in Ohio. You know, here in Ohio, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is the son of our governor, and our governor is very closely associated with the former Speaker of the House, who is in prison now for one of the biggest or the biggest bribery scandal in Ohio's history. And the fact is that our governor should be also. He ate from that same trough as the other Republicans that you know one went to prison. Some of them committed suicide. Did you know that here in Ohio? And you know that it's an extremely corrupt political regime that is in control here in Ohio. I think there in Michigan you have a little bit of a better shot at doing something through the courts, but here in Ohio we simply have to vote those suckers out.
I'm gonna give a few facts about the Latino American population. And you can add to that, Anita, some of the interesting facts. So, it is the largest minority group in the United States, making up about 19% of the total population, 63 million. And the median age for Latinos is just 30 years old compared to 39 for the total US population. So they are one of the youngest and fastest growing groups in America. They're also they have diverse origins. While Mexican Americans are the largest subgroup, about 62% of Latino Americans, but Latino Americans trace roots to about 20 plus Latin American countries, including Puerto Rico, El Salvador, Cuba, and the Dominican Republic. By 2020, Latinos made up about 13% of all eligible voters, and nearly one in three new voters entering the rolls was Latino. And about 72% of Latinos speak a language other than English at home, mostly Spanish, yet English proficiency has increased each generation, showing strong bilingualism and cultural resilience. These are all solid golden facts about the Latino community that's a growing force in the United States. How do you see that growth, Anita, and how do you see the effect of this growing minority in the United States that they say by 2040 they will be the largest minority in the United States, largest majority minority, if you know what I mean?
Yes, but I think that those things are all true. And I think that it, it I think that the statistics about our education rates and our incarceration rates are also significant as well. And I think that if you look at who's getting swept up by ICE right now, there's somebody who is trying very hard to make sure that we do not become more a higher percentage of the population. But I think our population percentage is probably higher than the statistic you quoted because there are a lot of Latinx people in this country who are undocumented. And I, I think that there is certainly a potential for power there. But my feeling is that we have to align ourselves with groups such as the Arab community, the Black community, who share um, our obstacles and who share our vision for a more open and egalitarian society. Because population alone does not ensure power. And you can see that simply by the fact that billionaires in this country wield so much more power than the majority of us. And so I think that the key to the power of the Latinx community is participation, is a growing voice, is to stand up and unite in our communities, but also to join that power with communities that have similar goals.
I want to show, or actually, there's another question here by Dr. Ajami. Our country used to be the cradle and safe haven of democracy. Are we still the cradle and safe haven of democracy, or are we losing the sacred democracy? We have started this episode, Dr. Ajami, with speaking about the lost democracy, the democracy that is still we strive for, but we have not arrived yet at it. But I'll leave Anita to comment further on this.
Well, you know, I think democracy used to be um, more enshrined in our values and is openly under attack right now. So I think that democracy used to be more highly valued than it is now. But I don't think democracy has ever really existed in this country, because I remember I was born in 1954, and um, I remember what it was like to travel in this country and not be white. And it was a very scary thing if you went to certain places. If you were in the South, there was open and overt um, what uh, discrimination, but you could feel it. Um, you couldn't walk down the streets. You couldn't shop in certain places, and that's not democracy. When you are afraid to walk down the street, and you're a little kid, because I was a little kid and I remember this. But and also, if you were a woman, if you were a woman, you didn't get the right to vote until what, the early 1900s. I mean, and if you were black, you didn't really get the right to vote until the 1960s. And that was the same thing with Latinos down in Texas. We have been a majority in Texas for since Texas existed. And that is where I remember some of these experiences, because my parents are from, or were from, Texas, and we would go down to visit family. And of course, traveling through Tennessee and Arkansas to get there was harrowing. And then being in Texas, there was places you couldn't go. But and there were places where if you spoke Spanish at school, you would be expelled. So I don't think America was ever a democracy. I think it just did a much better job of paying lip service to the democracy. And I think that people from other countries who didn't have to live here um, had an impression of America as being a democracy. But, you know, many years ago, I was looking at some statistics for Latinos, and Latinos who were born and raised in this country were doing more poorly, doing worse in school, had a higher dropout rate, had a higher poverty rate than Latinos who had immigrated here. And the reason for that is because the people who had immigrated here, they came from communities where they did not experience discrimination. And I would just tell you that I have a ninth grade education. I only finished the ninth grade. Um, I have six sisters and a brother. Half of us did not graduate from high school. That includes my brother. My brother is an attorney, and he only has a 10th grade high school education. And there's a reason for that. We were the only brown people in the school that we went to. There were no other brown people. In my entire class, there was no other brown people. And I think that I got the message very early on, you don't belong here. And many Latinos get that message. And but Latinos who were not born here don't grow up with that, and they have other aspirations. Now, in my family, all of my siblings who did not graduate from high school did graduate from college, including myself and my brother, as I said. Um, so I think that we persisted. For myself, I became active in politics. I became active with the farm worker union here in Toledo, the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, FLOC. And I got a vision of a different world. I got a vision of a world where we could speak up and fight back and have a place. And so we changed the trajectory of our lives. And I know that that's not because we're particularly brilliant. It's because we had a vision of what could be. And I hope that young people now don't lose that vision. That is the thing that really frightens me more than anything else, is the messages we are sending to our young people about what is possible for them in their lives in this country. Oh, young people.
This is Marcelo Gomez da Silva. He was not a threat. He is not a criminal. He is an 18 years old high school student from Massachusetts, an honors student, a drummer in his school band, a volleyball player, a beloved brother who makes ramen for his little sister, and a child who came to this country at the age of 5. America is the only home he has ever known. ICE agents arrested Marcelo on his way to a volleyball practice. He had no criminal record, but because his father was a target for some minor violations, traffic violations, and Marcelo is undocumented. He has a lapsed student visa. He was arrested by ICE. Um, Marcelo's attorney filed for habeas corpus petition, leading a federal judge to issue an emergency order preventing his removal or transfer for 72 hours. That ruling upheld his right to judicial review and ensured due process protections, but he remains in custody. He arrived in the US at age 7 on a student visa that later lapsed. He has no criminal record. He is a church member and deeply woven into his community. In ICE custody, Marcelo was held in Burlington facility designed for short-term processing, not prolonged confinement. He reported sleeping on a concrete floor, being denied showers and a Bible, and sharing cramped space with 25 to 35 adult men, many who didn't speak English. He also lacked proper food and hygiene supplies. Hundreds of students walked out of school wearing free Marcelo t shirts, and the volleyball team dedicated their game to him. Teachers' union called the arrest cruel and inhumane. Massachusetts governor denounced the detention, demanding answers and calling it unjust. Congressmen toured the facility and criticizing using ICE to arrest honors students. In his own words, Marcelo described his experience as humiliating and said he didn't understand why he was arrested. He said ICE's enforcement against non criminals is unnecessary and cowardly, and recounted comforting other detainees, praying daily, and promising to tell their stories once they are free. I cannot take more than one example, but there are tens of thousands of examples of Marcelo today. We are living this evil that Anita described as evil, and sometimes we are not in direct touch with it because it's not directly seen to us or directly influencing our close family. But we need not wait till that happens, till we feel with other people. And the same way we have to feel with all the oppressed people under the bombardment in Ukraine, under the famine in Gaza, and under genocide in Sudan or wherever it might be around the world. And this is the heart and spirit of the Green Party. I want to
Absolutely.
I want to end with that and Anita saying her closing remarks.
Well, the way I look at it is this is the water that we swim in. And we can say that's happening to somebody over there, but I'm sorry, you are in the same polluted water and it will affect you. It must affect you. And if it doesn't, it has already affected you because, our humanity is at stake. And, um, I am very proud to stand with you, Wissam, and with all the other people who have come together to build an alternative. And I look forward to making that alternative stronger and to running candidates in Michigan and in Ohio and in all those places where we think we don't have a shot, but we do. And to persist. And, you know, it is an honor to be among the people because we are the ones who understand what we need and we are the ones who can make the changes that we need.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you for all of you who have watched this conversation tonight that reminded us that democracy is not something that we inherit fully formed. It's something that we create together every day. We have to have the courage and participation and solidarity to make it happen. Anita is a lifelong activist and organizer, and she did her role in the struggles and building towards democracy. And for younger people out there, she's passing the torch to you to continue that fight. The challenges we face are real: low voter turnout, systematic barriers, disillusionment with politics as usual. But as Anita reminded us, these are not reasons to give up, they are reasons to organize, to imagine, to
Absolutely.
fight harder for a future where every voice counts. On behalf of Dearborn Blog Live Discussions, I want to thank Anita Rios for sharing her wisdom, and thank you all for being a part of this important dialogue. Let's carry these lessons forward, not just in our words, but in our actions, in our neighborhoods, in our communities, and in the movements we build together. Because democracy is not something given, it's something we must keep alive. Thank you, stay safe, and until next time, keep the conversation going.
Good night.